everybody, it's Jackie Jing, and I'm with Dr. Natasha Nelson.
Hi.
So you're probably like, what's happening here? Okay, I will explain. So we are launching a podcast, and it is called Mental Health A to Z. And Dr. Natasha is going to talk about her qualifications and her background in a little bit, but first I just kind of want to explain how this all came to be. So Natasha and I played volleyball together, and I would just like spew my drama. Like I'd be like, I'm out of my life, and she was always super receptive and gave me great advice, and I was just like, dude, we need to just like start sharing this information with people. So I'm really excited about this, and today we're going to be tackling a really interesting topic, which is, why do you choose the men or the women you choose to date? So before we get into that, though, Natasha, I'd love if you could just kind of like break down your background and everything like that. So.
Okay, like you said, I'm Natasha Nelson, and I'm a chiropractor by trade, and I've been in private practice for about 20 years. And I realized that I loved being in practice because I loved being with people, with my patients, and really diving into what was going on in their life that was causing stress, that was causing their physical bodies to break down. What I realized is I loved that so much that I went back to school to get my master's in spiritual psychology, because I really needed to understand like why the mind works the way it does, why we as humans do what we do. And at the same time, I was going through a divorce and realized I really need to know why I chose the husband at the time that I had, and really because I wanted to make sure I chose better the next time. But I had a daughter, and I wanted to make sure to know the information so I could teach it to her, so to maybe help her avoid some of the pitfalls of dating and who we date and why we date and the pain that we cause ourselves by the people that we choose to date. Oh my God. And we've all been there.
Yeah.
We've all been there. So that's why we're here. And so I'm so grateful to be here with you.
And Natasha is an exceptional human. She always has a smile on her face, as you can see, and like a big open heart. And I just, I cannot promote her enough. She has written this book. It's called Finding Courage to Let You Out. And she's just an awesome human. So super excited to be doing this. But
So I'm excited to be here with you, because I feel like dating and the people that we choose and relationships that we choose really highlight all of our operating systems. Yeah. And so when you understand what's going on in your mind on a subconscious level and why you choose the relationships that you choose, when you can understand it, it seems to make other areas of your life easier to understand, because the relationships are probably the hardest and the most intense, the most emotional, the most painful, and the most confusing. Yeah. So being able to untangle all that stuff, I feel like just makes everything simplified. So here we go.
Okay, so so we're gonna talk about the guys that we choose.
Yes.
So if we're gonna like take it back to the beginning, can I take it like way back?
Go way back.
Okay, so I used to do a podcast with one of my friends named Hannah, and we talked about like the guys we pick, and I straight up, I have no idea why, but like Prince Eric from Little Mermaid, like just like screwed me up for the rest of my life. Screwed me up.
It screwed up a lot of little girls. Let me tell you, I hate that movie. I hate it. I wouldn't even let my daughter watch it. I hated it. And then I wouldn't let her watch any of the Disney movies because I hated the messaging in them.
Yeah, that's valid.
I hated.
So anyways, I definitely have a type, and it's dark hair and light eyes. I was like telling you earlier about that coronavirus joke going around that someone like puts a meme up, and it was like, if you put a coronavirus mask on like every guy that you've dated, like you wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. And I was like, kind of true. But anyway, so I definitely have a type, and it's super cringy to me because I don't think I'm like, this is what I want, but I guess I am a little bit like, this is what I want. But my friends always comment that they're like, dude looks like your dad. And I'm like, oh, it's so cringy. But yes. Yeah.
But you know what's weird to me? It is weird, but what's funny is I also have a type, and it tends to be, the blonde hair, brown hair, same thing, light eyes, tall. Yeah, but my dad was black. So however, once I really did the work to understand why I was choosing the men
Yeah.
that I was choosing, I realized their personalities were either exactly the same as my dad or the exact 180 opposite. Like
Yeah.
something in me was like choosing men that were like so, reminding me so much of my relationship with my dad. And then there would be times I realized, oh gosh, I wanted something exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
But it's true. But part of what you realize is, the whole point of relationships, and you think about why we choose who we do as humans, it actually comes really to think about what we are doing here as human beings. It's really from our soul. And our soul, the purpose of our soul here on earth is to grow, to learn, and the only way we learn and we grow is through experiences. And so when you start to have experiences that challenge you, that's when you grow. And our soul knows, well, it could pick any relationships, but you're not going to grow and be challenged unless it's somebody that you really like. So of course you're not going to be attracted and interested in somebody that doesn't rub you the wrong way at some point to make you have to grow and learn. And so that's why when you think about somebody that you see when you first meet in that first 3 months, 4 months, even 6 months, there's a lot of chemistry, a lot of energy. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Your soul's like, yeah, I want you to really, really like this guy so that you're going to be really, really invested so that whatever shit you have to deal with, you will not leave because you're going to like him too much. And then you're going to have to stay and figure your shit out. And you can't just bail because you like him too much.
Why does it do that? I hate that part.
And because your soul is like, I am going to get you to learn something, and I'm going to make you face it and make you learn it. And the only way to face it is to actually make you have to experience it. If you just read it in a book, you'd be like, yeah, whatever.
It's so painful though.
I
hate
know.
it.
And your soul is like, as soon as you start choosing different men, then it won't hurt so much. And it doesn't mean they have to look different.
Yeah.
It just mean, I mean, they can.
Yeah.
But it really means when you start choosing from a different place in your operating system, then you choose different men, then you have a different experience.
Yeah.
And that's how you realize when you're growing and learning.
I think that,
Yeah.
mean, well, there's been some growth, but it seems very slow for me. But
It's not just you.
Yeah, I think we were chatting earlier, and I said that just when I was younger, I'm gonna judge me, people. I mean, I just straight up talked to tall, handsome dudes. That was pretty. I mean, I was young, you know what I mean. So I was like, okay, well, this is great, and I was totally running on chemicals. You know what I mean? I didn't come from the most loving, cuddly family, love my family, but that just wasn't our MO,
Yeah.
So when I got shown any sort of affection, I just was like, okay, you're attractive and tall and you're affectionate, so hi, we're gonna get married. It's been a week, okay?
You're like, I am not leaving you.
Exactly.
I love you. I'm not
forever.
leaving. You are mine.
And then, literally, like you said, 3 months, 6 months would go by, and then everything would start falling apart because there is just the chemicals wear off. Then you're forced to actually look at this person and be like, do I want to deal with them or not? And then what sucks is that I'm a super loyal person, you know what I mean? So then once I've gotten past that 3-6 month stage, I'm like, all right, we got to make this work. What do we need to do? And I've dragged on relationships that I should have bailed out on so much earlier. And I think that honestly, just thinking of some of my most recent breakups, that is probably the biggest lesson I've learned, is to know when to pull the plug. And I don't know, maybe you can give some insight into that, because I want to be loving. I want to be a good person. I want to be loyal. There's so many people out here that I feel just quit so easily and feel there's so many options. And I'm like, why am I doing this though?
Yeah.
Why?
And it's an interesting, because that exactly what's happening is when we first meet people and there's that energy, yes, it's chemical, but it's also because we put our best foot forward, our best face, none of the baggage and stuff from either person was really there.
Yeah.
And then whatever's there doesn't really seem like a big deal, or whatever is there, we really kind of, with rose-colored glasses, we're like, well, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
And the irony is that it's usually that very thing that turns into the absolutely deal breaker by the end.
Yeah.
And when you look at loyalty, that's where you start looking and learning about yourself and really understanding, well, why am I staying in a relationship that is not going to change, and this is how it is, and yet stay. Like, why wouldn't, once you see what it is, just go, I'm out?
Why?
Why? And so I use,
Help
I know,
me.
so, yeah. And so one of the things that, I came from a physically abusive home. So my father was very physically abusive to my mom, to myself. And I remember when I was growing in my teen years and before that, the idea of dating, I was very confident and sure I would never ever date somebody who was physically abusive. As I knew the moment there was one hand laid on me, I either have to leave or get out, and there's no second chance. And I knew that. And so I never was in that situation because I knew like that was something that was very hardwired.
Yeah.
However, having to learn what it meant to be, my dad was an alcoholic, and what it meant to learn what is emotional abuse, what's verbal abuse, because those were not clear to me. And those, because I grew up in that, felt very, although I didn't like it, very familiar. So when my whole childhood existence, and my parents split up when I was about 11, and then it was like, that was just the normal.
Yeah.
And so men that I dated, and not all of them, but some, they weren't violent men, they weren't even mean, but they would have a streak in them, which they could have an emotional or verbal confrontation or say or do things that were abusive. And to me, although I may not like it, it was normal. So I would stay. I'd be like, well, this is what I know. I didn't know any different. So if you never learned anything different or better, you just go with what you've learned.
Yeah.
That's just what you do? Okay, that's what you do.
Yeah. I think for me, it has been it has just been a train of just train wrecks. Is that an expression? I don't even know. I think for me, the biggest problem is like I said, I didn't make dating a good person a priority when I was younger. And now that I've gotten older, instead of making dating a good person a priority, I made dating someone who I thought was equal to me a good priority. Like someone who I was like, okay, like I don't have to pay their rent. This is a plus. Like, you know what I mean? Like it just like is astonishing to me. Like you said, your operating system was when they would freak out on you or be mean to you, you're like, oh, well, this is normal. Which, I mean, like, straight up, my operating system is, I was bullied a lot at school, didn't have the greatest childhood, and so it's like, I have a really damaged operating system, you know what I mean? And so, for me, it's like, the guys that I have chosen, I mean, like, it's just repeating, like, an awful cycle. And I think it gets better, like you said, with time. Like, I'll be like, okay, well, this guy pays his rent, but he's super mean to me and plays mind games and manipulates me all the time. And this guy is, super clingy and needy and gives me a lot of attention, which is great. Oh, wow, like, I can't have a life. And now he's, like, getting verbally abusive with me if I want to do anything outside of what he wants to do. And then I've straight up been with guys who are just, like, they neglect me. Like, they're not mean to me. They're not nice to me. They just neglect me. And I literally was like, this isn't that bad. Like, at least he's not mean to me. And it was killing me slowly inside because I was like, well, at least he's not, like, cussing me out or, like, we're getting into, like, blowout fights. But it was just like that. I just am like, Jackie, like, why do you keep on putting yourself through pain? But I guess it's like you were saying earlier, like the soul is like, time to learn, Jackie. Baby steps. Yeah,
baby steps. And in all fairness, you're not the only one with a broken operating system. The truth is we all have some area of our operating system that's broken.
Yeah.
And I really wouldn't call it broken. I would just say it hasn't learned anything and it's inexperienced. And it's like learning a language. So you can't be mad if you grew up in a home, you're not going to be like, oh my God, I didn't learn to speak German, I'm broken. Like, no, you just didn't learn how to speak German. Like, okay. So then you learn how to speak German.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. We're learning the language of our soul, our operating system. And the only way to learn that is experiences to go, oh wait, I didn't like that. I didn't like the way it felt. I didn't know what it meant or what, and you don't know until you're in it.
Yeah.
And that's why right about 3 months, 6 months is when everything starts to come up.
Yeah.
And the truth is, one of the first steps is, there's a point in time where, whether it's really the truth is, when you first start dating somebody, there's usually clues and signs within the first month.
Yeah.
Where you kind of go, I don't know.
Yes. But then
I don't know.
ignore
And yet we
them.
ignore it.
Yes.
And really, it's that part. It's the part of us that says, why are we ignoring it? Like, the truth is, it's not, they don't want to just like, whatever, and dump every guy every time something feels off. But the truth is, why not just explore and find out more about what feels off?
Yeah.
Like, intentionally, if something feels off, like, find out information, ask questions, provoke to see what kind of reaction you're going to get.
So this is, I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
don't mean to
no, that's
cut you
good.
off, but, okay, so my first question was going to be like, okay, well, what do you do when you see a red flag then? You know what I mean? And like, how do you address that? Oh gosh, sorry, my computer just went wonky. We're good.
Okay.
So that would be my first question.
Okay.
The second question would be, what if the guy doesn't open up to you, like, at all? Like, because that happens to me a lot. Like, I just have guys in my life who just are like, change the subject, want things on the surface level, which is probably another red flag. So I don't know. I guess those are my two questions.
So the first one of red flags. And it's for us individually to be able to tell the difference of what those red flags are. If it's a red flag that feels like it's going to be abusive, get the hell out. Like, and most of us we know that, but we don't always do it. If it's verbal or if it's emotional abuse, they're very subtle. Verbal is a little bit, we can see it a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, if we recognize the red flag and we don't follow up or follow through with that, that's on us.
Mm-hmm.
That's on us to start to ask ourselves, why is it that we have this red flag, we have this gut feeling, and yet we're not listening to it? And the truth is, some part of us has been told at a very young age that our feelings don't matter. That what we feel, what we think, what we see doesn't matter, and it's not important. And that's the first time of really early childhood. If you've grown up with that, then you don't know that this feeling that's a red flag is valuable and should be listened to. Because you're like, well, why should I listen to it if all the adults in my life told me that I should not listen to it, that it's not valuable, that all my feelings are stupid or lame? Like, you just kind of learn to go, well, my feelings don't have any value and don't have any meaning. That's the first thing that happens. So it's for us to start to say, well, if I have this feeling, then this feeling has value. This feeling means something and it matters. Even if it doesn't matter to anybody else, it only matters to me. That's the most important. And then to be able to take the time to go, okay, the red flag this guy is giving me. Now, is it a red flag, like you said, he's being very distant and not sharing? Well, that's something that's worth investigating, because that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means somebody who's a bit guarded doesn't mean he's always going to be that way.
Yeah.
It just means right now he doesn't trust you to share with you.
Yeah.
And okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. But then you look at the other red flags and you just go, some of them are really, so once you discern, is it a red flag, I've got to go, then you have to make the decision to say, I've got to go and be done early. Otherwise, if you ignore it, it's going to keep coming back around and around and just get harder and harder to walk away from until you finally feel like your life is being squeezed and compressed and you're, like you said, like you're dying inside, because you really are. And that's when you finally just go,
gosh.
I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like the one that I was talking about where I felt neglected, it was just like, I just kept on being like, well, he's not making me cry because he's calling me terrible names, or that he's like, you know what I mean, like doing something super manipulative and messed up, like, or, you know, ignoring me and playing my, you know, it was just like, it was just neglect in this really weird way.
Isn't it weird how in our minds we will rationalize bad behavior to be like, well, I know it's bad, but it's not that bad. And somehow we get this idea, well, he doesn't make me cry and he's not mean. And if you really look at, I mean, really, if you
It's
say it out loud,
terrible.
it is terrible.
I know, I
but the
cannot
truth is,
believe I literally
well,
did
I'm
that.
glad that we're talking about it because that's
Yeah.
the point. And
Yeah.
the truth is, we all do it
Yeah.
because there's some part of us that is just that little, like that child in us who's like, oh my gosh, well, he's paying some attention to me, and it feels really good that somebody's paying attention to me. So I will tolerate all the bad behavior to get the part of when he's paying attention to me. And so there's this dynamic that starts to go on. And if you look at physical abuse, like I remember very young, which is when I made that decision, I knew what physical abuse looked like. Like my dad, I came home, I was so happy to see him and so just like ready to run up to him and hug him, and he smacked me. And he was so angry and mad and mean, and I didn't understand. I was about 6 years old. And the next day he bought me a bike. And I remember the bike, like I wanted this bike. I wanted a bike, I wanted a new bike, and I was happy to have the bike.
Yeah.
I also knew at 6 years old that the bike was my dad's apology. Like you didn't say it, but I knew it. Mm-hmm. And what I start realizing is even now in our relationships, if we don't get over the anger and the hurt and the fear of our relationships with our parents, that's the cycle we continue. So I dated men that the same thing, that they wouldn't physically hurt me, but they would say things emotionally or just be very unkind in the same, like ignoring me, or just be like, well, I'll see you when I see you, or I'll call you when I call you, and no, you're not allowed to stay here, and just very unkind.
God, I hate
and
guys.
then would turn around
I'm like, God, I hate guys.
and then would turn
Just
around and
kidding.
buy me
Okay.
something the next day.
Yeah.
And then I would be like, oh my gosh, so it's fine, everything's fine. But this operating system, and then having to learn and let go of recognizing what abuse is and where, I'm not mad at the person for abusing, because that's on me. That's where I realize I have the control to say, well, if I recognize it and I see it, I need to do something about it. And then either at first you got to break off this relationship, but really get to understand yourself of, why am I allowing this kind of person in my life? And I know for me, the biggest change was when I finally confronted my father in my own way, because my father passed away 16 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I never confronted him, never had a chance to do anything like that. But I had to do it in my own way. So I did a lot of writing, which is a lot of how my book came about. Mm-hmm. And in my writing, I finally confronted my dad and was able to speak as a 30-year-old woman, as if I'm this little girl who's finally able to be like, I hate you, Dad. I hate you. You're mean. You hurt me. All of the things that I couldn't say to him as a 6-year-old little girl, I finally could say in my 30-year-old self. And by confronting him and finally getting all of that anger out, as I realized it was the anger and the hurt that I felt that kept drawing all of these men who would continue to hurt me and make me feel angry. Mm-hmm. And once I got rid of the anger and started no longer hating my father or hating my childhood, all of a sudden those men all kind of went away.
Yeah.
It's like they're in my life as friends and coworkers or in different ways, but I no longer feel attracted to them. I could look at them and say, wow, they're very attractive men, mm-hmm. but I no longer feel any chemistry to be like, oh, I'd want to go out with them. To me, they're just like, okay, well, they're attractive men. Okay, and leave it at that. So they're not drawing that energy into my life anymore.
So I wrote down 2 questions.
Yes.
We're running out of time for this
Okay,
episode.
wow.
So, I mean, that was a really great episode. And I actually
Yeah.
think maybe we can do a part 2 of this,
Mm-hmm.
and do why do we keep these toxic people in our life?
Okay.
And then how do we change? You know what I
Okay.
mean? Because I think that those are 2 things. Because for me, it's definitely been like, I knew I was being manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was being verbally abused. I knew I was being abused. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I just continued to stay in these situations, which we will address next time. So anyways, really hope you enjoyed the first episode.
Oh my gosh, this is great,
I know,
Jackie.
I love
it.
it too.
Yeah.
And again, don't forget to check out our book. And then what is your social media handle?
You can find me at Natasha, that's spelled Natacha, _ life doctor.
Okay,
And
great.
all one, and you'll find me there. And I look forward to hearing your comments. hearing what you have to say and any feedback. I'm much appreciated. So
Yeah, we would love to, if you guys have questions that you want Dr. Natasha to answer. I feel like this is like a radio show, like love show, yeah. But I know I have a lot of questions, so if you guys don't, like, I'll definitely come up with some stuff.
And the truth is, when it comes to relationships and life, questions are pretty universal. The names might change, the places, but the truth is, whatever you ask, right?
Eyes, but it's okay.
Right. So whatever you ask is really going to be of value to somebody else too. So feel free, ask any questions, and we'll prepare and make sure to answer your questions.
All
Yay!
right,
Thank you. Bye.